Little guys
Welcome to the February 11th meeting. Please silence your cell phones as Tom comes up as Rotarian of the Day.
Join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for this club and for all of our members and all that we do in our community. Lord, we pray that you heal our nation. Help those that are making decisions, Lord. Guide them. Just help.
Aaron, maybe you could introduce our guest slowly.
Okay. So our guest today is Mike Couch. He's been the director of Central State Hospital Local Redevelopment Authority for 10 years,
9 years.
9 years, and he's the interim director now. So I guess he'll be up shortly.
Sorry about that. The technology has been awful. Okay, so that's working.
Whatever you mind if I go ahead and get started?
Go ahead.
We can talk while you get that. First, I thank all of you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And before I get started, I think I've got one of my board of directors members, Billy Jones, is here. Nolan Stevens isn't here, but I've always counted, I come to Rotary, there'll be 2 or 3 of the BOD guys here, so I pay attention to what I'm doing. It's probably been 2 years since I've been to Rotary, number one, so I appreciate the opportunity. Number two, I suspect that Bill and others have, this will probably be the last time I get to talk to Rotary. But history flies, and we moved along. I was talking to my wife last night. 10 years ago, April the 1st, I walked into City Hall and met Rusty Kidd and Richie Bentley and Barry Jarrett, and they told me about working on the state hospital. Now, I came to talk to y'all probably a year after that, and there was a lot of doubt. There will it ever work? We're not sure today sometimes if it's working or not, but I've always appreciated the hospitality and just the kindness y'all shown toward the project. And what I'm gonna do when we get it up is very quickly, that's not my grandkids, that's still the grandkids. But what I want to tell you first before we get into it, and I ran the governor camp about 30 days ago, and he was down in July with the ribbon cutting and grand opening kitchen project. He asked me, give me one word that's made that project work out. Really simple: partners. There's nothing that we have done collectively as an authority. There's nothing I have done. There's nothing anybody in this room has done collectively. There hasn't been a partner behind every one of those projects out there. And what I'm going to give you is kind of a quick update. Okay, no problem. How we're doing, but I've added the word partnering to that because we'll look at. Make sure I can understand. I don't think it's working. We'll catch up different. That's fine. But as we go through this, I think you'll understand that if we would have looked at this in isolation, quote unquote, as the City of Milledgeville project, if we'd have said that was going to be it, we would have never, I think, progressed, thank you, sir, to where we are today, which I think is still 15 years worth of work to be done. So what I want to do is kind of go through a little bit about the authority. The first time I came up, there were 5 or 6 pretty slides, not a whole lot of words. We got some meat and substance I want to talk to you about. And then we'll try to answer any questions you've got as well. So again, the partnering and repurposing, that's the key word. If I can say one thing that has made any success we've had come to fruition, is people like Tom Glover. Tom Glover was the first one in the barrel. Am I right now? Right, Tom? Tom bought the first piece of property at the state hospital and came back a day later and said, what am I doing? I said, I don't know, Tom, but we'll have a good time doing it together. And if you go out and look at his property today, actually you went in under a lease, as I remember. We got state to approve the lease. It's not only going to one property, but actually 3 properties, counting the structure behind and the structure in front. So that's our mission. That's a whole lot of words. But I'm going to summarize it very quick. And I'm going to talk about the new board here in just a couple of minutes. The one driver that I've had since we've been at the state hospital and that I reported back every month, how many jobs have we created? And that really has been the genesis of what we've tried to do. You can talk about selling real estate, you can talk about doing strategic planning, but the definition when I first tweaked over the deal almost 9 years ago was, can you create jobs out there? And that really has been what has driven us as an authority. Many of you know I came out of the Department of Defense BRAC background, base realignment and closure. And there's some military guys in here. Jeff, you've been to Fort Benjamin Harrison. I come back, Desert Storm, still in Europe, come back to the United States, and a good friend of mine who's passed away, Major General Ron Brooks, got the announcement that Fort Benjamin Harrison was going to close. I was retiring as an active duty military officer. I'd gotten to know him very well in Germany. He asked me, can you help with this? I said, yeah, I can't even spell real estate. I'm a field artillery guy. But because of his relationship, because of the way that community, the state of Indiana approached it, the county, the city, the federal government, it worked. And if you go to Fort Benjamin Harrison today, there's about 15,000 new jobs and almost $1 billion worth of new construction that in 1997 was a pretty quiet, lonely place if you were up there because they moved the schools, they shut the place down. What I brought was a moral lessons taught by some smart people in the right business. And the whole theory behind what we do that the state bought in about 9 years ago is if you got real estate that's lost its way, it has no purpose. It has no mission anymore. It has no task. In the private world, it has no return on investment. And it's a drag, it's an asset that's dragging down your balance sheet. Do something with it, get rid of it. So what we did was we took the BRAC lessons, came to Georgia, great leadership, and I'm very pleased to announce that former Senator Johnny Grant is now the chairman of the board. Johnny set the first meeting 9 years ago, Governor Nathan Peter. We went in not knowing what to expect. We had Johnny, we had Rusty, we had Mitchie, we had Sammy, And we sat down, and Governor Deal's point was that they're not asking for a bunch of money. If we've got a bunch of real estate in Milledgeville we don't need, give it to them, let them do something with it. How do we legally quantify that and legally legislate the ability to do that? Have them report back, because we can jerk it back next year legislatively if we have to. The good thing, and I'll talk about in just a minute, is that it's work creating jobs in the community. And that's really has been the driving force, is how do we take a piece of real estate at the Central State Hospital, how does Tom Glover lease that building, private building? How many employees do you got? 15 in that building? And 15, you had 2 or 3 when you started? That's a success story. And we've got other success stories like that. So all those words, all of that's neat, but really the thing that drove us was how do we work with the state, work with the federal government. And Congressman Heiss was just down 10 days ago, right, Mark? Looking at projects. We establish relationships. We're not bashful to ask for help, Mark. I tell you that. We will ask in a heartbeat. So that was kind of the mission. One last words when I presented the Governor Deal, but I'll never forget. I was supposed to have 15 minutes. We ended up there for almost an hour. He looked at Steve Stills and the state property director and said, "Give them what they want. If they just want legislation, if they don't want millions of dollars, if not asking to reopen the state hospital, let them tinker down there for a while, let them play with it." And so thus the State Hospital Development Authority was born. There's really 3 different functions on that slide right there. One of them is the legislative piece. We've been very, very well supported by the legislation and the different agencies. And I'll go through those very quickly. House Bill 815 established the authority. And if you read it, it's not a long piece of legislation, but it's showing powers as to some things out there. We can levy, we can cut deals, we can finance, we can convey real estate, we can lease it. It had never been done in the state of Georgia. It was cumbersome what you had to do to get a piece of state property surplus. Sometimes 2 years. House Bill 815 set up construction. It set up the authority. Now, is there city military official here? I don't see anybody. Kudos and thanks to the city. The city believed in it. We were fledgling. Somebody had to pay the bills. Somebody had to help us with the board. The city was willing to put up the receipt equity. But we started then with House Bill 815, with the first authority stood up and hired his executive director. House Bill 495 and Senate Resolution 788 are just properties that are their legislative pieces that legitimize what we're doing. What it said in state code before that was that if Merritt Massey wanted to come buy a building to me, we had to get an appraisal and we had to sell it to them within 10% of the appraised value. No flexibility, no wiggle, no move. Those 2 pieces of legislation, number one, made it all surplus, which often took years. The whole campus, all 2,100 acres, but then said, by the way, authority, you can negotiate, and as long as you can quantify by something called job creation or tax credit inducement, you can do whatever you want to do with property value. And we tested it with those 2 pieces of legislation. For those of you who've been out there, we've got a thing called the Boston Nursing Care Center. Dr. Carl Musso. Governor Deal approved that first phase. We had 16 acres of land and appraised for $650,000. Dr. Musso signed a deed and covered and warranted that if we sold that property to him for $50,000, he would build a $23 million building and he'd hire 225 folks from Baldwin County. He's done it and more. It's worked so well, he's going on to building 2 right now. He's in building planning on that right now. So that gave us the Attorney General's endorsement that as long as we quantified value, you couldn't just give it to you, it had to be something. And also there's a big clause in that legislation about benefit to the community. Things like food banks, rape crisis centers we've got out there. All those things fit into the definition of what is acceptable. House Bill 85, I laugh about that one. That's our liquor law. I get in trouble with some pastors. Until we passed that legislation about 5 years ago, if you want to have a glass of wine, state hospital, you were breaking the law. Even if you were in your own property, sitting in Tom Glover's conference room, we had to open that up. So I went to regulating industries and opened that up. That resolution 228 was passed. That really opened the door as far as the balance of the properties. It's given us a lot of room to operate. So the last piece, Senate Bill 512, that's a little unpopular among some parts of the community. It was recognized really in the government administration that this had become more than just a city-centric project. This had become a state authority. We are a state authority by law. You can read it. And in negotiation with the governor's office and legislative delegation, we opened the way the board's appointed. And I think probably your Rick Williams appointment, I think. Governor looked at me, and Governor Bill already said, we need to have some play in this. If you want to come ask us for something, let us help you with board appointment. So today, the board's comprised of 9 members. You have 1 appointed by the governor, 2 by Senator Jones, 2 by Representative Williams, 2 by the city, and 2 by the county. And there was nothing more than I did in Indiana. I did the same piece of legislation in Indiana because your stakeholders have to have those things. So I think legislatively we're positioned well for the next 10 years. Now the new board may want to do something different. That's a decision they'll make in the legislative delegation. So that was about 5 years worth of legislative work, and I got to know my way around the Capitol way too much up there. But it worked, and our pieces passed. They were supported by our legislative delegation. It was Johnny and Rusty, supported by Bert and Rick, and we often got legislative signed before the end of the session. And the governor would then sign it for us. So that gave us the legal structure to do what we do. The second thing, you get legislation, you look around and say, man, I got 2,100 acres. What do we do next? What are we going to do with this mess? We at first approached a group in Atlanta. They wanted $250,000 to do a SWOT analysis. We all know what SWOT is: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Our budget was less than $250,000. I found a group from one of our board members in Chicago that came at their cost, signing a non-compete made up of real estate experts. And they came in and did a down and dirty analysis of campus and the community. They told us things we didn't want to hear, but we needed that. It's still a good planning document. I think it's probably the new board and some uses along the river, with that river track. And then we got to work, and those are just projects. It's not all listed, but, and we'll go through our project. There's some significant projects right there. The Bostic was the early test that demonstrated you can quantify value in job creation, value of payroll, and real estate taxes. Dr. Musso paid almost $300,000 in real estate taxes last year. We can't leave alone. Chairman Craig does a happy dance in that. Hard Kitchen, it's completed, it's open. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but that was a 5-year deal. When it got done without Century Bank, Derek, thank you. You helped us close the bond on that building. It is how we had to go about doing things. Georgia Military College, early stakeholder, auditorium, 3 houses along Broad Street. Kids behave, trash is in the bins. They burn too much gas, they're going on. Jeff Gray called me, we own the gas utility. We'll talk. Jeff Gray said, my gas bill is $1,000 a house. I had the meters when you read. I think they need to close the door and put some clothes on those houses or something. It was like a sauna in those. When Georgia Military came, and there are 45 other entities, public or private, in the state hospital. 4 years ago, there were 2. That's it. So we really opened the door, and boy, we got some great young companies, some little small companies. Brand new, outbreak. I was at George Moore Veterans Home yesterday. We talked about this post 9/11 PTSD TBI treatment pod. It's under construction. Initially, it's going to be 28 beds. It's going to be 72 beds now. This, I call this the Center Isaacson Project. I went to Washington 6 years ago and testified before the Senate Committee on Homelessness. It's going to be a thing of beauty. We have a group of veterans in this country that are post 9/11 that suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. This is a facility created to treat them the complete cycle. Most will come with some substance abuse issues, some behavioral issues. They'll come in, they'll get stabilized, families will come, and they'll go home. The kids aren't going to live there forever. But those buildings are being built as we speak. grand opening March 15, 2022. Infrastructure transfers, that was critical. Real estate, infrastructure is part of real estate. The state agreed with us to pay the infrastructure, different owners. The city of Milledgeville owns the water system. Georgia Power, we sold the real estate to Georgia Power. They spent about $9 million upgrading the utility system. The Development Authority, we found legislation that allowed us to do that. We negotiated with Public Service Commission. I have an operating partner, City of Dublin Gas Utilities, and our check last month was about $26,000 for the quarter. To me, it's passive income. It was a $9 million system. State conveyed to us. I had to find an operator. It can only be gas utilities on the campus. There was only two, Atlanta Gas and Light and Dublin Gas Utilities. Atlanta Gas Light wants to give them a couple of $1 million to come operate it for us. Dublin came in and partnered with us. It's turned into a good partnership. And then we got some road money from DOT. Commissioner McMurray funded. Frank Ball had a lot to do with that. How many times did you redo those roads out there? We got trouble with that once or twice. But again, nothing there has happened without a good public-private partner. And that's the bottom line. If you count what's in the kitchen today, there's about 700 jobs, about $175 million in construction all over the place. State money, federal money, our money. Bill Jones has got a project out there with some folks that renovate apartments. There are multiple partners all over that campus. We're proud of that. I like that list because that talks about everybody that's out there. And that says a lot. That list was empty 4.5 years ago. I think Tom's name was on it. And we didn't have any more. The poor old Tom kept saying, what am I doing here? When you look at that, we've got everything from public entities to private small companies to big companies. But it's taken everybody in this room and everybody at the state to get involved with it. And really, this was an initiative that started with Governor Deal, has now continued with Governor Kemp, where the decision was support that thing. They haven't asked for money yet. We've never asked for one direct funding in the appropriation penny for the state. That's got to change pretty soon. Some buildings got to come down. But it's working, at least I've been. And tell you, go see entrepreneurs out there, go visit them. There's some great folks out there. Many of you had a lot to do with them being here, so I appreciate that. And Bobby, thanks for keeping us insured. You keep us out of trouble out there. So this is I call it the anchor project for the campus. Some of you met Angelo Pizarro. 5 years. 5 years that project came from the time he walked in. I met him in Atlanta. He came down, looked at the facility, went back up, met with the governor, met with Commissioner Black. He stayed with us. He stayed with us from day one. And we could not have found a better partner for that facility. And I'll tell you a little bit about his business. Angelo has facilities in Brooklyn, New York, Roanoke, Virginia, Lubbock, Texas, and California, and then Milledgeville, Georgia. He's going to produce upwards of 40 million meals this year. His primary buyers are institutions such as hospitals, schools, nursing homes, you name it. And he's good at what he does. He's been doing it for over 20 years. He stuck with us. He absolutely stayed with us when I was talking to somebody the other day. I'm surprised he stuck after 3 years. But this was a complicated project. It's a USDA BNI $10 million loan. We own the facility. We lease it back to Angelo. And he's paying us, and start paying us an equity fee in April to use our facility. The most important thing is hiring folks. He's hiring folks. He's got about 40 employees today. He's hiring a second shift. But I'll challenge all of us in the room. I talked to him this morning. He said, Mike, I'm struggling. I'm struggling to find folks in Baldwin County to go to work that want to work. So if you have any influence over that, I'm hearing that in other places. We need help in getting people in. And I'm trying to do my part. I've got technical college and Department of Labor helping him. But there's no excuse for a man whose average starting per hour rate is about $15 a quarter an hour plus benefits. In my opinion, there ought to be people lined up trying to go to work. But he said of 10 people he hires, I'm keeping 6 right now. That's a reflection on us not wanting to work. So we got to help because it's going to affect other projects. This thing is really a neat project. Some of you have been through it. If you'd have told me we'd have gotten that done in 11 months, I said it never happened. I didn't believe we could do it. But we had great contractors. Neil Dyer was involved locally. You see Neil pat him on the back. He had hair when we started that now. But it is a great project. He's going to have about 180 employees by the end of next year. And here's what I know, and I can't disclose who the corporation is. He has signed a contract with a major retailer. First year value of that contract in 22 is $84 million. He'll produce for the first 200 Southeast retail outlets in 2022. It's a 7-year contract. It goes up to about $250 million in year 7. And I can't disclose who it is. He'll announce that when he's in a couple of weeks. But this is the lodestone. This is the honey hole. He also signed a contract with Bo Jackson Foods, former Auburn Star Heisman Trophy winner. I've met him. He's hard as a rock. He's in the food business. He's got multiple lines of work, and he is a 78-year-old entrepreneur that said, I've never been to a community that has cared for me and helped me as much as this community. And everybody has something to do with that. So it's wide open. It's wide open and it's going. But kind of scary a year ago anyway. Some of you ask about a strategic plan. I guess that's something that a lot of organizations have. We made a conscious decision after the CRE report. Let's not get so bound to a plan that we can't deviate and take advantage of an opportunity. So this may change, but this was kind of the broad guidance the board gave me. Look at these buckets of work. And if somebody walks in the door and says, we want to come to that campus, find a way to get it. If it's legal, moral, and ethical, and you can quantify it by the way you construct the deal, let's get them here. And it's work. We've got entrepreneurs. We've got a film entertainment group that have leased a prison for 5 years. They're paying $4,000 a month for a fall down building, and they do films in there, and that's fine. They insure it, and their check comes the first of every quarter. Agribusiness, that is its own life in the kitchen. We've got other projects around that right now. Healthcare, Boston, PTSD, rebranding. I'm going to give Aaron Andrews credit for that. I don't rebrand well. We'll talk about that. And then organic market opportunities. That's a big word, a big phrase. I like to use the word nimble. You got to be nimble with what comes into your office. You got to listen. And then you got to find a way, can we work this so that everybody can mutually benefit from the deal getting started? Those are guiding principles on the right that the board told me, so make sure it succeeds, measure the probability, define the partnership, make sure it's a return on investment qualified by jobs, money, or tax inducement, and then if it breaks, get out of it. And so that's kind of the way we structure deals, the way we look at it. What's next? I'll let you look through those real quickly. I told Commissioner Black last week, I believe that the Park Kitchen is going to be the anchor tenant for other agribusiness as their anchor tenants involved. The aquaponics hydroponics is real. The large building, I'll tell you who it is. It's the Andrew Young Foundation, former Ambassador Andrew Young, Haverty Financial, and an Indian group out of Canada. They want to do aquaponics hydroponics in that building. We're just in the early stages of understanding. They'll come back, I'll take it forward probably in March to prove that they can be in production producing fish and vegetables. They think they can offload 80% right across the street from the kitchen, which is the way it should be. Broadband, for those of you who know me, I've been chasing broadband for 5 years. I've given up on EDA, U.S. Department of Commerce. We do have an offering, and the county and city know about it, for a private group, equity group out of New York to come finance broadband. That's got to be a community-based decision, but we sure need it. Dr. Price. Brand new state road barriers, the first hit move right now, right out by the driver services on Carl Vinson Road. That was a deal that Governor Deal offered us, and if I would put the state patrol in a building, let him sell the old barracks on Highway 49 to the school district, then he would appropriate the money to the state building the building. It's under construction. I mean, they're doing infrastructure right now, and we got post 33 in the Wilkes building. So we'll get that building back to sell in 8 or 9 months. PTSD TBI facility. It's underway, scheduled completion mid-March 2022. That's going to be something, that's a feel-good project, a good project. That's about 76 employees, so that's good on the campus. Smithson Financial, don't finish that one up. That's only taken 2.5 years right there. That's been a challenge, but we'll get that one closed in the next 10 days and we'll move on. Filming in Rivers Prison Complex, that's one I alluded to, it's Graceful Productions. And then a big decision for the board today, the 157 acres between the Vincent Highway and the Coney River, we now have a quickly deed on. The board's got to give direction on what they want to do with it. Is that to me, and I don't know if you want to add to that, because I mean, as far as real estate committee, that can be a gem for the community, is that a fair statement? But we can't get in the house selling business. So I'm going to leave that to the board and the real estate committee, but that has tremendous upside opportunity for a bunch of different opportunities. So those are things in front of us. I leave that up because people get a little testy because they think we've shut the state hospital down. We haven't. State hospital is still there. It's in the Cook Forensic Unit on 65 acres. We have rebranded the entire project as Renaissance Park. And Russell Allman and Aaron and some other board members did a good job looking at how do you talk about something rising from the rubble, and came up with the logo of Renaissance Park. It's not renaming the state hospital. It's just a way we can market and brand the campus. So I told them, guys, get y'all out of here by 1 o'clock. We got 15 minutes. That's about 10 years worth of work very quickly, but I'll try to answer any questions you've got. I'm proud of what's happened out there. And a lot of folks in this room have had a lot to do with that, and I do appreciate the support. So questions? Yes.
200 buildings?
Yes.
How many of those sold? How many?
52. 52.
And most of those are small?
No. Well, if you look at Bostic 1, Lisa's building, he had a building on site that was 100,000 square feet. It was demolished. It wasn't market ready. He built a brand new building on top of that. If you like, 80% have been adapted. Thompson, an adapted building. GMC's got 3 have been adapted for residential housing. Altera, the Rape Crisis Center, Cleveland Brothers. We haven't demolished 4 or 5 structures since we did that.
But all the big, so those big buildings, you know, the ones, I mean, what's the plan, I guess, for the ones that are sitting out, will never be.
Here's the wild card. And when we did the legislation, and Steve Stansel admitted it, the state's in a box on the big buildings. It's state hospital employees, and here you go back and call it. We don't have to take those buildings. We don't have to take Walker and Green and Jones and Powell. We can just say we don't want it. Legislation allows the authority to decline, and to this day, we declined it. We met with it, well, a couple of us met with the governor's chief of staff about a month ago. There needs to be some demolition money to clean up some of this stuff out there. GMC, we're trying to get you into the same umbrella. Those buildings on the quad, you can do a facade restoration where you keep the streetscape. And the state historical preservation people love it, know why. Those buildings are going behind. But you can buffer, you can structurally add building behind it, and you tap into federal tax credits. That's the approach we gave Governor's Chief, but we've been talking about it for 2 years. It's time to get on with it. Because it's going to come a point, it won't be in my watch. This board's going to look at the state and say, guess what? It's your buildings. The thing that bothers me the most is liability. Those buildings are dangerous. And for those of you who know Chairman Terry England, Terry and I spent 2 hours wandering in there last summer. He says, this is a liability lawsuit that will make $5 million. I'm like, change. So technically, the development authority has no obligation to take anything that looks like that, but we need to come to an agreement to help. So I'll continue to work on that. The board tells me how to do. $5 million cleans up the quad, and that's a great opportunity. So, what other questions?
I'll just say that Mike's AmeriCorps, he's literally made it so personal. I don't think anybody else could pull it off. And, so we're starting on a portion of the finish line. My gosh, they've grown the last 2 years.
I appreciate that. I got to come home, and I'll tell you our last story. I almost didn't take a job. Some of you knew my dad. My dad was ruthless. So it worked. I met with Johnny, I met with Bill Craig, I met with Rusty, I met with the mayor, I met with Sammy. He was still living out on 441 South. I went out and showed him out down. We were out on his carport, and I looked at him and he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know if I want to do this." Those of you knew it, he wore a caterpillar hat 90% of the time. He had a little walking stick. He took that walking stick and said, "Son, if you can't help your hometown, get back on 441 North and go back to Indianapolis." So I came home, and very seldom did I get a chance to do that. But he was a crotchety old guy. I lost him a year after I got back. But you got to love it. And whomever the board brings in, you'll find somebody to love it as much as I do. Because you got to be passionate. But it's paid by people like Tom Glover and the Cleveland brothers. What a great family. The Omega brothers. We got some great folks out there. Some great small companies that have done exceptional things. But thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. You have questions? Thank you all very much.
Okay, any last announcements? All right. So, you're adjourned.